Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 9 articles in this episode for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of sonsoflibertymedia.com, and it says, Court rules in favor of police who pounded on the wrong door and didn't identify themselves, then killed innocent man for holding a gun. And this one reads like this. According to federal appeals court, police will not be held accountable for banging on the wrong door at 1:30 a.m., failing to identify themselves as police, and then repeatedly shooting and killing the innocent homeowner who answered the door while holding a gun in self-defense. Although 26-year-old Andrew Scott had committed no crime and never fired a single bullet or lifted his firearm against police, he was gunned down by police who were investigating a speeding incident, engaging in a middle-of-the-night knock and talk in Scott's apartment complex. In ruling in favor of qualified immunity for police, the U.S. Court of Appeals for 11th Circuit has given law enforcement agencies further incentives to engage in aggressive knock-and-talk practices which have become thinly veiled, warrantless exercises by which citizens are coerced into talking with heavily armed police who knock on their doors in the middle of the night. Insist that there is nothing unlawful, unreasonable, or threatening about the prospect of armed police dressed in SWAT gear knocking on doors in the middle of the night and asking the homeowners to engage in warrantless knock-and-talk sessions. And constitutional attorney John W. Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute and author of Battlefield America, The War on the American People. However, as Andrew Scott learned, there's always a price to pay for saying no such heavy-handed requests by police. If the courts continue to sanction such aggression or aggressive, excessive, coercive, knock and shoot tactics, it will give police further incentives to terrorize and kill American citizens without fear of repercussions. On July the 15th of 2012, Deputy Richard Sylvester spotted a speeding motorist while on patrol in Lake County, Florida. Sylvester pursued in his patrol car, but lost sight of it. Subsequent reports caused Sylvester to believe that the motorcyclist might be armed and wanted by another police department, and had been spotted at a nearby apartment complex. Arriving at the complex around 1:30 a.m., Sylvester and 3 other deputies began knocking on doors close to where a motorcycle was parked, starting with apartment number 114, where a light was on inside. Apartment 114 was occupied by Andrew Scott and Amy Young, who were playing video games and had no connection to the motorcycle or any illegal activity. Assuming tactical positions surrounding the door to apartment 114, the deputies had their guns drawn and ready to shoot. Sylvester, without announcing he was a police officer, then banged loudly and repeatedly on the door, causing a neighbor to open his door. When the neighbor explained that the motorcycle's owner did not live in apartment 114. This information was not relayed to Sylvester. Unnerved by the banging at such a late hour, Andrew Scott retrieved his handgun before opening the door. When Scott saw a shadowy figure holding a gun outside his door, he retreated into the apartment only to have Sylvester immediately open fire. Sylvester fired 6 shots, 3 of which hit and killed Scott. A trial court subsequently ruled in favor of the police, ruling that Scott was to blame for choosing to retrieve a handgun before opening the door. On appeal, the 11th Circuit ruled that Sylvester was protected by qualified immunity, reasoning that use of excessive force did not violate clearly established law. 4 judges dissented with the majority's ruling, likening the knock and talk to a knock and shoot, and rejecting the idea that Scott caused the shooting by exercising his Second Amendment right through his possession of a firearm. And there's a link that says, click here to read the ruling in Amy Young versus Gary S. Borders, if you want to read more on that article. But wow, 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 wow. I mean, that sets a precedent, saying that you can't even defend yourself in your own home from somebody, you know, I mean, it could very well have been a robber at the door, for all he knew. Somebody coming to lam him in the head. Who knows? Crazy people everywhere. And, the cops knocking on the door and they're not even sure it's the right apartment. So the next one we have is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, the devil and Lois Lerner, IRS fast-tracked approval for Satan Club. Can't make this stuff up. The IRS hates patriots and loves Satan. Seems to be the message some coverage Judicial Watcher's revelation about the speedy approval of exempt status for the organization that sponsors the after-school Satan program. Judicial Watch's release led with this. It says, while the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, makes conservative groups wait years for tax-exempt status, an after-school Satan Club, launched to hinder Christian-based counterparts, got its nonprofit ranking in just 10 days. Records obtained by Judicial Watch show. Breitbart picked up on the issue after school Satan Club received fast-tracked tax-exempt status from the IRS. Documents obtained by Judicial Watch show the Internal Revenue Service fast-tracked tax-exempt status for an after-school Satan Club in Tacoma, Washington, while the federal agency was discovered to be either denying conservative and Christian groups the same status or making them wait for years. Not surprisingly, the tax professor picked up the story as day 1409 of the IRS scandal. The professor suspended daily coverage a while ago, but does post when something comes up. The nice thing about Judicial Watch is that they provide the source documents that they base their fantasies on, so you can see for yourself that Reason Alliance Limited, which does in fact sponsor the after-school Satan program, applied for exempt status on November the 21st of 2014 using Form 1023EZ, and that the IRS positive response is date stamped October 31st of 2014. Reason Alliance Limited is connected to the Satanic Temple, according to Lucian Greaves, who responded to my request for information about Reason Alliance. The program that After School Satan is countering is the Good News Club, a project of Child Evangelism Fellowship. Well, there you go. The next article is off of Charisma Caucus, and it says, hearing will decide whether or not First Amendment protects your right to pray in your own home. Can't make this stuff up. Attorneys for First Liberty Institute are now arguing to defend Americans' rights to pray in their own home without government interference. Last fall, we introduced you to Mary Ann Sauce, a former nurse who was prevented from praying in her home by officers of the Lewisburg, Kansas Police Department, who were threatening to arrest her over simple noise complaint. As you may recall, she was home late at night when the police came to her home. When they knocked on her door, they did not identify themselves as police. And with her front door's peephole inoperative, she did not open the door. They returned later and identified themselves as police, then demanded to be let into her apartment. As they berated her for not letting them in the first time, they refused to give a specific reason as to why they were there, as is required. When she showed them a copy of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, given to her by her congressman, one of the officers mockingly said, "That's nothing, it's just a piece of paper, it doesn't work here." The officers continued to act in a belligerent manner towards House, telling the terrified woman she should prepare to go to jail. She asked if she could pray beforehand, and while one of the officers granted her the request, the other told her she could not pray in her own home. First Liberty Institute took up her case and sued, but the district court threw out the complaint entirely, denying South her day in court. The attorneys are about to enter the courtroom of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. Ironically, the court to which Supreme Court nominee Judge Neil Gorsuch has been appointed, an effort to have the case reprimanded back to the lower court with instructions to hear the case. As part of the motions filed before the hearing, the attorneys representing the police made an audacious claim last December. The act of stopping South's prayer did not burden her free exercise of religion because only conduct that forces her to change her religious practices or causes her to stop praying altogether would violate Constitution. As asserts the free exercise clause protection extends beyond the right to choose one's own religion and includes the right to pray in the privacy of one's own home, which is the fundamental right clearly protected by the First Amendment. They argue that that commanding her to stop praying without a legitimate law enforcement justification burdens her ability to freely exercise her religion in her own home. At 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we will provide updates as they become available, it says. Wow. I mean, that is just wrong on so many levels. So many levels. Can't even begin. The next one is off of BizPac Review. And it says, Sean Hannity issues challenge and warning to hypocrite Ted Koppel. Release my whole interview. Sean Hannity has issued a challenge to veteran newsman Ted Koppel after he aired a snippet of an interview with Fox News host. Koppel did a piece on why America is divided, focused nearly exclusively on conservative news outlets like Hannity as the culprits causing the divide. In the piece, Koppel told Hannity he was bad for America, and while he fought back, Hannity didn't take Koppel with the passion that his audience is accustomed to seeing. Hannity says that's because his interview, which he said was originally 45 minutes, was heavily edited and fake news. Hannity put out a tweet that says fake edited news. I did about 45-minute interview with CBS. They ran less than 2. Why did Ted cut out my many examples of media bias? Fake edited news. I gave an example after example of why I say journalism is dead. I also gave many examples of how liberalism has failed. Funny, behind the scenes, after I answered the first question, Ted said, none of that will air. Ted, you need to keep this in. Then he issued a challenge daring Koppel and CBS to release the entire interview. And he says, funny, behind the scenes, after I answered the first question, Ted said none of that will air. So I kept saying, Ted, you need to keep this in. He also noted the hypocrisy of Koppel, who gave his opinion while berating opinion shows. Attention, Ted was saying all opinion shows are bad for America, but he was saying this while giving his opinion. But it looks like, not surprisingly, Hannity is set to fire back, guns blazing, after he tweeted this ominous warning. He said, I should thank CBS News for providing me the opportunity to unmask the anatomy of edited fake news. Stay tuned. Hope David and Ben watch. Stay tuned indeed. The next one we have is off of Natural News. And it says, new bill would allow farmers to sue Monsanto if GMO crops invade their property. Farmers in Oregon could finally get a win in their fight against companies like Monsanto. House Bill 2739 is under consideration, and if passed, it would allow farmers and landowners to sue biotech patent holders like Monsanto for essentially trespassing on their property. The House Bill 2739 summary states that it allows cause of action against patent holders for genetically engineered organisms present on land without permission of owner or lawful occupant. Defenders of the bill believe it is a step in the right direction to remedy problems caused by GMOs. Sandra Bishop of Our Family Farms Coalition, which supports HB 2739, spoke to the East Oregonian website saying, "This is not a wild legal grab. We will not be compensated for our angst. We will only be compensated for the provable legal damages. Contamination from GMOs can cause farmers to have dramatic economic loss. They run the risk of being rejected by export markets that have banned genetically modified organisms. GMO chemicals can lead to highly resistant weeds and insects that are nearly impossible for farmers to eradicate and are too time-consuming for them to manage. Farmers who own organic crops could be subjected to losing their organic certification if their product becomes contaminated, which would diminish the premiums earned on their product. As more markets are looking to carry non-GMO produce, farmers have the opportunity to meet that need and typically get paid a higher price for their product. But the difficulty in preventing contamination is a constant threat that they face. For years, Monsanto has bullied farmers when their GMO seeds ended up on their farmers' land. While contamination can occur from many different ways, but by no fault of their own, farmers have been sued when unauthorized GMO crops show up in their fields. The companies that own the seed patents typically win these cases, leaving farmers with few options. This bill, if passed, would give power back to landowners who want to continue to have GMO-free farms. Plaintiffs who decide to sue these companies could receive up to 3 times the amount of damages caused by the GMOs that harmed their land under the guidelines of HB 2739. Proponents of the bill find this solution to be fair because it now forces Monsanto and companies like them to take responsibility since they are the ones who profit from GMO patents. If they believe it will affect the bottom line, they may be more inclined to regulate the contamination. Supporters also note that finding the culprits will be fairly simple by using the genetic tests established when patents are approved. There are some opponents to the bill, of course, including farmers that depend on GMO seeds. They argue that pollination among similar crops go far beyond GMOs. Critics have also tried guilt-tripping supporters, making claims that the passing of this bill could result in seed companies refusing to introduce new innovative products in Oregon. Oregonian Scott Dowman, policy director of the Oregonians for Food and Shelter Agribusiness Group, stated that if companies face the threat of additional lawsuits, they will reconsider whether they will sell things here. This is not the only bill being brought forth in Oregon this year regarding GMO seed patent holders. House Bill 2469, if passed, would allow local governments to restrict their usage altogether. About time. Next one we have here is off of Natural News, and it says, world rapidly running out of rare minerals needs to manufacture cell phones and mobile devices. That minerals needed for technology such as cell phones and mobile devices may run out in the next few decades. A new study gathered experts from various government, industrial, and academic groups across 5 continents who suggested that unless there exists a universal sharing of science data, we will soon face challenges in technology, mineral supply. There is a high potential for manufacturers and suppliers of electronic gadgets to run out of the materials they need to maintain their business. In theory, enough global reserves to meet the world demand until 2050. Researchers share their doubts, however, suggesting that the rapid growth of technology has pushed the global demand for minerals to dangerous levels. Consumers need to realize that there are few alternatives available for minerals required for electronics. Minerals are often difficult to recycle. Technology and improved healthcare have allowed people to live longer. The world demand for minerals has increased to support the number of people on this planet. In particular, due to the growing technological advancements, minerals that are main ingredients for certain technologies such as solar panels, copper wiring, laptops, mobile devices, and electric cars have become very popular. Already, geophysicists are evaluating the mineral supply and demand, assessing its capabilities in the 21st century. Determine three factors affecting the economic outlook. Determined use of the mineral, that is, industries that are reliant on these reserves, percentage of the population who consume these commodities, how much of these minerals each person uses, technology materials, unsustainable resources. Gold and diamonds are the two biggest precious commodities that are being mined. These resources are usually sold the way oil and gas are, that is, there are global channels that are utilized. In contrast, commodity metals like iron ore and copper, which are used in electronics, are typically sold through individual deals. There are nuances involved which trigger price fluctuations. Investors often have to gauge the market several times a day to determine profitability. Companies have to deal with various challenges and often stop mining due to lack of economic viability. Those that do pursue their track are forced to increase their prices in order to maintain relevance. Reports say it takes around 10 to 15 years for a mineral exploration to yield mineable deposits. Furthermore, it is estimated that early exploration efforts yield only about 10% of viable commodities. Businesses need to be patient. The ratio between usable excavation and the time spent looking for these minerals is troubling. Couple this with the fact that the last major copper discovery was found in Mongolia 15 years ago and was only able to produce limited amounts of the mineral in late 2016. The 2016 USGS report on mineral commodity is another noteworthy survey to consider. Over the last 4 years, total mine production has lessened. The difference in amounts initially appeared to be negotiable, but the current trend suggests that fewer minerals are being mined while the demand is steadily increasing. There is also the additional factor of geopolitics. Countries where minerals are likely to be found may have poor governance, making it higher risk for supply, but the production from these countries will be needed to meet global demand. We need to be thinking about this, says Salem Ali, the study's lead author. The domino effect. Leaders must recognize the high risk of an economic collapse should be the world mineral demand not be met. Global challenges can be seen. Not only can this lead to dramatic price increases, but can affect energy production as well. Alternative energy sources like solar power, for example, are still dependent on mineral resources for their infrastructure. The researchers offer two solutions. The first, that the results nations to plan for mineral scarcity by collaborating with organizations focused on sustainability. Second, that this would lead to improved transparency among nations and develop a global sharing system of mineral data. And if you want to read more on this, you can go to a link here in this article. It's called Collapse of Global Resources at collapse.news. The next article that I have for you is off of All News Pipeline. It says, all ANP content flagged as inappropriate in restricted mode by YouTube, Google, because it does not fit their liberal ideology. First thing this morning, I saw this video by Paul Joseph Watson titled My Last Video, or My Last Ever Video, where he discusses the blatant censorship by Google by their YouTube channel, where conservative independent media has now been deemed extremist. Not 10 minutes after watching, see that one of Dabu's videos, video channels called Dabu 777 had been deemed inappropriate by YouTube for users that have restricted mode turned on. P content flagged as inappropriate on YouTube restricted mode. Since search engine traffic and YouTube videos being monetized are all part of generating revenue to keep independent media websites in business, supporting the cost of the work we do, and maintaining our sites, all forms censorship on the part of Google are meant for one purpose and one purpose only: to strangle independent media in an attempt to shut us all down, specifically those that lean to the right of the middle on the political spectrum. So I decided to see if our video channel, which is under my name because it is connected to Google, which merges all accounts, was also being censored. It is. Videos highlighting the dangers of sanctuary cities, snowflake and millennial news, Ashley Nasty Woman Judd's annex, underground tunnels, intelligence agency spying. Everything we write about or make videos about will not show to anyone that has restricted mode turned on over at YouTube because they are deemed inappropriate. Not only that, but their super flaggers are flagging videos left and right, with YouTube demonetizing them. Upon review, maybe half will be remonetized, depending, I guess, on whether it is a liberal reviewing them or not. Let me be very clear here. While individual videos may be flagged as not advertiser friendly and demonetized, the whole channel itself has been flagged, and all videos disappear for anyone that has had their restricted mode setting turned on. They are not judging on content. They are censoring based on ideology. Below, I walk you through what is known, or I'm sorry, what is shown when I have restricted mode turned off, and then how everything just disappears when I turn on restricted mode. Beneath the video, we will show other ways they are trying to kill off independent media. Remember that people that turn on restricted mode do so in order to prevent things like pornography or violence or extremist content from showing up in their YouTube feed. So what they are doing is putting independent news that doesn't fit logical agenda into the same category as porn and extremism. And there's a video in this if you want to pull it up and take a look at it. The article goes on, says, blatant censorship. The channels mentioned above, including ours, do not have any pornography. We do not discuss sexual explicit topics. We do not curse in our videos. We do not show violence other than when reporting on riots, which is major news when they get out of control. So it comes down to blatant censorship in an attempt to shut us all down. Google also recently added a category for their review teams for anything found on their search results that could be upsetting, offensive, according to a March 16, 2017 Associated Press article. The guidelines, which run 160 pages, are an interesting look into how Google ranks the quality of its search results. For instance, it gives examples of high-quality pages such as the home page of a newspaper that has won 7 Pulitzer Prize awards, and low-quality pages such as an article that includes many grammar and punctuation errors. An example of Holocaust history as a search query. A resulting website listing, top 10 reasons why the Holocaust didn't happen, would get flagged. The new upsetting offensive flag instructs quality raters to flag all web results that contain upsetting or offensive content from the perspective of users in your locale, even if the result satisfies the user intent. So even if the results are what the person searched for, such as white supremacist websites, they could still get flagged. But it doesn't mean the results won't show up at all when someone searches for them. What is offensive, and since when did upsetting someone translate into a reason to censor free speech? I mean, if I call someone a snowflake because they need safe space and trigger warnings from any free speech that offends them, will these quality raters deem that offensive and upsetting and bury those articles? You see where I'm going here? This is not just a slippery slope. It's an outright systematic attack against free speech, and specifically against independent media, which kicked into high gear when Google and other tech giants were unable to control the masses during the 2016 presidential election and influence them to vote for the person they were all working for, and in many cases donating to. Sheeple News highlights just some of the things that are not considered offensive to these tech giants, such as calls for the assassination of President Trump, malicious personal attacks against Melania Trump, open calls for extreme violence against white people due to their white privilege, relentless personal attacks and calls for violence against Christians, calls for openly killing conservatives whose speech is not enjoyed by campus crybabies, open resistance to overthrow the federal government now that Trump is the president. An article at the Investment Watch blog highlights the latest actions being taken on the part of Google in a move to completely eradicate all traces of independent journalism and alternative media websites from the web. Google has begun the process of compiling a list of all offending sites so they can de-rank them from their search results. They also provide an official example of the guidelines Google's using, shown below. And there's this chart here if you want to pull it up and take a look at what they're doing. Independent media must adapt. Independent media did not bypass the MSM in 2016 by giving up just because we were up against the establishment with their MSM puppets, and we will not give up now. Search engines. Encourage the use of search engines other than Google. There are many other Google alternatives to search, but you will get all the results, not Google's censored results. This includes Bing, Yahoo, Ask, Wow, WebCrawler, InfoSpace, info.com, DuckDuckGo, and Dogpile. Find one you like, set it to default, and bypass Google's censorship practices. Making money from video content. For video creators, YouTube has always been first go-to in order to generate revenue, and many that are now seeing YouTube consistently target them for monetization have already built a base of subscribers, so just moving to a different platform would be like starting over. So a multi-pronged plan must be implemented. Video creators can upload content to YouTube and other video platforms so they can perform their audience and subscribers exactly where their videos can be found and start building a base on the new platform, on a platform that is not going to flag their whole channel just because of an ideological agenda of censorship on conservative content. Daily Motion allows video content to be monetized and works in a similar manner where content creators can set their ad formats, meaning ads before, during, or after the videos. Brightcove is another video hosting and publish platform where creators can generate revenue with relative ease. Vimeo is another video platform, but one where creators do pay a membership fee and can utilize their Vimeo on demand to generate revenue. Video creators that have a substantial subscription base on YouTube might also consider taking subscribers to become patrons who can donate as much or as little as they want monthly using a service such as Patreon in order to create. Okay, they've got a typo in that. In order to overcome YouTube's censorship practices. If a channel has 10,000 subscribers and just 1/10 of them donated $1 a month, the creator would earn $1,000 a month based on content, not dependent on YouTube's arbitrary demonetization practices or censorship policies by flagging independent media content based on ideology. The bottom line, the attacks against independent media are increasing in intensity and coming from every direction, including social media censorship, Google search engine downranking, advertiser attacks or boycotts by liberal snowflakes, YouTube flagging practices, and demonetization and labeling content inappropriate for restricted mode. We can all fight back against the mainstream media, the tech giants, and social media dictators, as we all did during the election cycle, by refusing to allow them to the unchallenged right to misinform and refuse to inform the masses of anything that doesn't match their ideology, and to decide what we, the people, have the right to know. And there's some video in this if you want to pull it up and take a look at the video. Next article that I have for you is off Natural News, and it says, Bill in West Virginia would ban homeschooling, treating it as child abuse. I can't make this stuff up. A new bill proposed in West Virginia could make the act of homeschooling equal to that of child abuse. Lawmakers feel that parents are denying their children an appropriate education. If passed into law, Bill SB 528 would prohibit homeschooling and order CPS investigations for children who had 10 or more absences without an acceptable excuse. The bill, a bipartisan effort proposed by West Virginia Senate Educator Chair Kenneth Mann, Republican in Monroe, 10, and Democratic Senators Michael Romano and Ron Stallings. SB 528 summary says the purpose of this bill is to establish a process for providing that a student is not eligible for either home instruction exemption once certain truancy-related legal proceedings begin or after a conviction. The Homeschool Legal Defense Association is vehemently opposing this bill and is urging its members, as well as citizens in the homeschooling community, to contact their state senators, including Kenneth Mann, and tell them not to vote in favor of this legislation. The HSLDA explains that the bill is unnecessary because there are already laws in place providing procedures for school authorities to step in if there are legitimate concerns for the welfare of a child. They also state that schools often make mistakes when it comes to recording so-called unexcused absences. The fact that a child has accumulated 10 days of alleged unexcused absences is not a viable reason to interpret parental abuse or neglect. An increasing number of parents have decided to homeschool their kids or place them in homeschool communities for various reasons, including health concerns for the child, bullying, religion, and objections to the Common Core curriculum taught in public schools. For the schools, the real concern over the child boiled down to dollar signs, as reported by One News Now in in 2014. It was estimated that West Virginia public schools were losing nearly $12,000 worth of funding per student. Not willing to take such a substantial loss, that same year, Ritchie County Superintendent of Schools Ed Toman forced his staff to contact the residents and places of employment of homeschool parents in an attempt to bully them into putting their children back in public schools. During the calls, parents were questioned about their ability to teach their children and asked a series of questions, including, what can we do to get your kids back in school? Some families were also guilt-tripped when they decided to meet with school counselors at the beginning of the school year and told that their choice to homeschool could result in teachers losing their jobs. Governor Earl Ray Tomblin signed a bill that went into effect May of 2016 that significantly reduced the rules imposed on homeschooled students and parents in West Virginia, as reported by Charleston Gazette. The bill HB 4175 no longer required annual assessment reporting for homeschool students and lowered the threshold that homeschoolers must pass on tests to achieve acceptable progress. Senator Romero was opposed to the bill, and SB 528 feels a lot like a retaliation tactic against Tomblin and homeschooling families. The right to decide how to educate children best has been a hot button issue. The HSLDA further states that the bill would lead to laws that presume public education is what is best for children and that parents are not reliable when deciding whether or not to homeschool. This is classic nanny state behavior, and it would be an alarming overreach of the state government if passed. Yes, indeed. The next article I have is also off of Natural News, and it says fast food diets causing majority of stroke and diabetes deaths across the U.S. Have been advising the general public to cut back on fast food consumption for years, and for good reason. Recent data showed that poor dietary habits accounted for nearly half of all metabolic deaths in the U.S. Researchers at the Tufts University in Massachusetts found that there were more than 702,000 metabolic deaths among American adults in 2012. 45% of these deaths were linked to poor diet, researchers said. Researchers also noted higher rates of diet-related cardiometabolic deaths in men compared with women. Cardiometabolic deaths associated with poor dietary choices were also more prevalent among people ages 25 to 54 years old. The risk of cardiometabolic deaths were 10% higher in African Americans and Hispanics compared with Caucasians. Diets high in sodium and processed meats, commonly seen in fast food restaurants, increased the risk of cardiometabolic death, the study showed. On the other hand, the risk of cardiometabolic death remained stable for diets high in whole grain, vegetables, fruits, and omega-3 fatty acids. The Skinny on Diabetes fast food link. According to the International Diabetes Federation, called the IDF, more than 29 million people in the U.S. were diagnosed with diabetes in 2015. The IDF also revealed that there were 219,413 diabetes-related deaths in the country in 2015 alone. The estimated cost of diabetes was $10,941 per person. Diabetes remains the 7th most common cause of death in the United States. Previous studies have already established a link between fast food consumption and diabetes. In 2012, a study published in the journal Circulation found that people who ate at fast food establishments 2 or more times a week had a 27% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. An analysis of more than 3,000 African American and Caucasian respondents aged 18 to 30 showed that those who visited fast food chains 2 or more times a week gained 10 more pounds and increased insulin resistance than those who visited less. While there have been many discussions about fast food effects on obesity, this appears to be the first scientific, comprehensive, long-term study to show a strong connection between fast food consumption, obesity, and risk for type 2 diabetes. This said study co-author Mark, and I think it's pronounced Pieria, of the University of Minnesota. The results were published in the journal Lancet. Eating specific fast food items also appeared to increase the risk of diabetes. An analysis of more than 44,000 participants revealed that women who ate burgers, fried chicken, or Chinese food more than once a week had higher body mass index than those who did not eat fast food. Women who ate these items were also 40% to 70% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes than those who did not. Studies implicate an increased stroke risk. A study presented at the American Stroke Association's annual International Stroke Conference revealed that neighborhoods with the highest number of fast food chains were 13% more likely to suffer stroke than areas with fewer fast food joints. Data also showed that each additional McDonald's, Burger King, or Taco Bell raised the odds of stroke by 1%. Another study published in the journal Circulation showed that people who ate fast food items at least once a week were up to 20% more likely to suffer coronary heart disease than avoid eating out. Increased frequency of fast food consumption also coincided with higher cardiovascular risk, researchers said. According to the study, people who dined out 2 or more times a week had between 50% to 80% increased odds of coronary heart disease than those who avoided fast food joints. The big picture is that this fast food aspect of globalization and exportation of U.S. and Western culture might not be the best thing to spread to cultures around the world. Global public health efforts should focus on maintaining the positive aspects of traditional cultures while preventing the spread of outside influences thought to be harmful based on scientific evidence, said senior researcher Mark Rivera. So there you have that. And that's all I have for you today. If you like what I'm doing here and you appreciate the news that I'm bringing you, give it a thumbs up. Let me know. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that yet. And that way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.